There's a company whose product carries over 2 billion people every single day, and yet almost nobody remembers its name. It's not an airline. It's not a train operator. It doesn't move you sideways at all. It moves you up. It's the box you step into without a second thought, dozens of times a week, your whole life. It's called Otis, the company that invented the elevator as we know it, and it's worth roughly $28 billion. But here's the strange part. Selling you the actual elevator is barely where the company makes its money. 91% of its profit comes from something almost invisible. A service contract most people never think about. So how does a box that moves up and down become one of the most resilient businesses on Wall Street? It starts with one man. And one terrifying demonstration, in 1854, Elisha Otis wasn't trying to invent anything. He was just trying to move heavy equipment safely inside a factory in Yonkers, New York. Elevators already existed, but they were terrifying. If the rope snapped, the platform simply fell. In 1852, Otis designed a simple safety brake. If the rope failed, metal teeth would catch the platform in the shaft. To prove it worked, he did something almost reckless. In 1854, standing on his own elevator platform in front of a crowd at New York's Crystal Palace, he ordered the rope cut. The platform dropped a few inches and stopped. The crowd gasped. The elevator industry was born that day. In 1857, the first safety passenger elevator was installed in a New York department store. And suddenly, buildings could go higher than anyone had dared build before. Without that one demonstration, skyscrapers as we know them might not exist at all. Today, Otis splits its business into two very different halves. The first half, new equipment, designing, building, and installing brand new elevators and escalators. It sounds like the obvious moneymaker. It isn't. New equipment makes up 35% of Otis's sales, but only 9% of its profit. The second half is almost invisible. Service. Maintaining, repairing, and modernizing elevators that are already installed. Service makes up just 65% of sales, but a staggering 91% of all profit. In other words, Otis barely profits from selling you the elevator. It profits from being the only company legally allowed to maintain it for the next 20 years. Sell the razor at a loss. Sell the blades forever. It's one of the oldest tricks in business. Just built out of steel cables instead of steel blades. In 2025, Otis generated $14.4 billion in net sales. The company maintains roughly 2.5 million elevators and escalators worldwide, serviced by around 37,000 mechanics. Adjusted operating profit landed between $2.5 and $2.6 billion for the year. Modernization orders, upgrading older elevators, grew so fast that the backlog jumped 30% in a single year. 71% of all this revenue comes from outside the United States. Otis is genuinely a global operation. Nearly every skyscraper, hospital, airport, and apartment tower you've ever entered has paid this company, quietly, for decades. Keeping millions of elevators safe and running isn't cheap, and it isn't optional. Every unit under contract needs regular inspection, parts, and a trained mechanic on call. Otis employs tens of thousands of field technicians across the world, each one a walking cost center. It also pours money into research and digital tools, over $150 million a year, just in R&D. And competition on the service side is real. Independent repair companies fight for the same contracts, especially in Asia. The margin gap between new equipment and service isn't an accident. It's the result of decades spent protecting that service relationship. Here's where the business becomes genuinely exceptional. Service alone runs at nearly a 25% operating margin. That's roughly 4 times higher than the margin on brand new elevators. In 2025, adjusted earnings per share reached $4.05, up 6% from the year before. The company returned about $1.5 billion to shareholders in a single year. Through buybacks and a rising dividend, even with a shaky stock market, Otis is still worth roughly $28 billion. All of it resting on a business most people assume is just about steel boxes and cables. But this empire has been under real pressure lately. Over the past year, Otis stock has fallen nearly a third from its highs, as growth slowed and costs crept upward. In 2026, the company was forced to cut its own profit guidance, citing cost and productivity headwinds. New equipment sales in China, once a major growth engine, have weakened significantly, and the competitive landscape just shifted. In 2026, rival Cone agreed to buy another competitor, TK Elevator, for over $30 billion, creating an even bigger rival. Even the service business isn't fully protected. Independent repair companies quietly control about half of all service contracts across parts of Asia. So, how does a 170-year-old elevator company plan to stay essential for the next 170? It's turning elevators into data machines. Otis One, the company's connected elevator platform, now links more than 1.1 million elevators to the cloud. Every one of those elevators can report its own performance in real time, predicting failures before they even happen. That backlog of modernization work, upgrading old elevators with new digital brains, is now growing faster than almost any other part of the business. The strategy is the same one Elisha Otis proved in 1854. Earn trust once and get paid for it for decades. Which brings us back to the question this story started with. How does a simple box that moves up and down become one of the most resilient businesses in the world? Because once a building trusts an elevator company to keep people safe, it rarely ever switches. For 20, 30, even 50 years, Otis didn't build its fortune by selling elevators. It built one by becoming impossible to leave. Every quiet ride up to your office, your apartment, your hotel room, is a tiny transaction in a business that spans the entire vertical world. The next time you step into an elevator, remember, you're standing inside one of the most quietly resilient business models ever built.